Next project time. Tonight, we're going to start working with the next step, which is the Revolve planter vessel. Essentially, and I realize I should have grabbed the model examples. You're going to be making something that's more teacup or something, or some of that effect, as well as a tray. So that means two separate components, not just separate objects, different components. And for this to be a planting vessel, planter has to have some kind of a hole in the bottom. Ideally, multiples of them. You've seen a flower pot before, you get the idea. That's basically what we're doing. But the goal is what we're doing is before we took a sketch flat on the XY axis or XY plane, like you're drawing straight down on a sheet of paper. This time we're drawing on the XZ axis, so out in front of us, and we're only drawing half of the profile. So what we're doing, if you took a cup, Mad Hatter style, and have half a cup of tea, you have something that kind of looks like a slingshot or a wishbone. But we don't even need that much. We need half of half. So just a partial profile. Then what we're going to do is use a tool called the Revolve tool. And it takes that sketch, rather than extruding straight up and down in one direction like we did for this first project, this takes that profile and revolves it, rotates it, revolves it around a center axis. And you instantly create a form that way with internal space. Then we are also going to apply that same thing to create some sort of a dish below, so that obviously if you put water in this, it doesn't just spill all over your table. That's pretty much it. So using, the exact same tools, sketch, sometimes extrude, and the new friend, Revolve, we're going to create two separate bodies, at least one with holes in them intentionally, the other one, that's up to you. So it technically would take a little plant, and if we get to it, maybe we'll bring some soil, and it'd be a perfect excuse for me to do some dividing at home, and we'll put some little friends in a pot. Anyway, let's hop over to Fusion and see what the hell I'm talking about. So a couple of examples here. And let me change my visual style so it's not quite so chaotic. Go from shaded hidden to shaded visible edges only. All right, so this is on auto color. So press Shift November, Shift N, and it changes to colors that I've applied appearances to, but we'll just leave it as auto color so you can see more clearly. Now, first thing you notice, well, one, there's a bunch of holes in the sides. This is not a requirement, but that is an option. But main thing is, look at the project tree over here. You don't have bodies inside. You have multiple components, each with its own origin, bodies, sketches, and construction plane. So I'll talk about construction plane shortly. The important thing is this is not just separate bodies, but rather separate components. I'm going to be showing you how to do that. The main requirements for this is that it has to be two separate components, not just bodies, consisting of some sort of a vessel, mainly with drainage holes in the bottom. It would ideally actually stand upright, not just weeble wobble, as well as some sort of an adjoining tray that would then catch water. You can add stuff like Old Drippy to it, or whatever sort of details you wish. Entirely up to you. Other simple example, simple vessel, still with a tray, got a fancy lip on it, and this one has multiple holes in the bottom, as well as a nice little snazzy foot. Do not worry about applying appearances to these. We are just using default coloring and such. But the main thing is that it consists of two separate components, not just objects, but components. Uses the Revolve tool to create the vessels, and it has holes in the bottom that ideally water would drain through. As far as the actual assignment goes, let me switch to other sharing. The actual assignment here is designing a round vessel, your choice, some degree, that ideally is big enough to then fit a small plant inside. This says due for Wednesday, October 9th. So that means next week we are going to be working on these in class, but I absolutely expect you to play with these, experiment with these outside of class on your own time. This project focuses on working with multiple component creation, showing you how to, and I'll certainly show you how to do that. Again, the old friends of creating sketches with lines and fit point splines, making sure these are closed lines to create profiles. Use the Revolve tool to do so. We're going to I'm going to show you a few extra tools to use, things like the circle pattern, which instead of making each one of those holes individually for the drainage holes, no, let the program do the work. Make one hole, use the circle pattern tool, and make multiples around a circle. Extrude will still be used to cut straight through, and then we'll play with auto appearance, stuff like that. The model requirements: it must be made of at least 2 components. You want to make more power to you. Must be large enough to house a small pot, or a small plant rather. General size, let's say about 120 millimeters wide, which is roughly 6 inches, and about 100 millimeters deep, which is roughly about 5 inches. It's not actually, but again, roughly. Wall thickness, that means your profile. I'd say like no more than 2 to 3 inches, or sorry, 2 to 3 millimeters. Anything over that is overkill. Anything under that is pretty thin. This little teapot, or this little teacup here, is about like 1.5 thick. So also anything thicker, you risk not even being able to print. Like 1 millimeter thickness, that's kind of underkill. It's gonna be super floppy. Anyway, again, it also must have a drip tray. Must have drainage holes. Number of them, more than 1. And the shape of them, up to you. Appearance tools we can play with later. Now, for this project moving forward, because we're starting to get our feet underneath us and kind of figure out what we're doing, I will always have an advanced option. This isn't for extra credit. This is just, oh, you kind of got the idea. Let's throw a little bit more on top of it. You can use, I'll be showing this to you, possibly not, or likely not tonight, but you can use tools like the emboss or extrude sketch tool to actually create raised surfaces, be that just detailed drawings, text, anything like that. There is a difference between extrude and emboss. We'll discuss it later. You can certainly use like the circle or rectangle pattern to create multiple features on the surface of the body. But also remember that these do need to be joined into single objects as far as the vessel itself and the tray. Those should be 2 separate things, but anything you add to it needs to be a singular body. So the planting vessel needs to be a singular body. The tray needs to be a singular body. Still 2 separate bodies, 2 components, but those need to be singular. We'll explain that stuff later. All right, so that's pretty much the basics. Let's go through a quick example of how this works. Let me start a new project here. First things first, save. Example in class, Revolve, new vessel, because I have all of these saved as vessel. If you want to use a image or anything like that to reference, great. I'm not going to bother with that. I am going to do, however, is I want to create multiple sketches as reference points. I'm going to create first a sketch on the XZ axis, which is the red and blue, right in front of you. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a rectangle to give myself just a reference box. I'm going to start at the origin point, select, and oops, I selected the wrong rectangle. I meant to hit 2-point rectangle. Start there. And like I said, we're only making half of the profile. Height-wise, it needed to be about 100 millimeters tall. Width, 120. So half of that would be 60. And I'm going to double click on this, select the whole box, and press X, or on the toolbox, hit construction line, leave it there. I want that just to give myself a quick reference box. That way I don't have to deal with measuring and all that kind of stuff. I can just draw whatever I feel like inside of that. And I know that when I hit revolve, as long as I make it up to the size of that box, it's going to be the dimensions I need. So I'll open up Sketch, bless you. And I'm just going to say reference size. Cool. All right, start a new sketch, exact same spot. There we go. But since that since that reference box, since that first sketch is a separate sketch, I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to worry about messing it up or vice versa, but it is still there, visible, and I can work with it. All right, so from here, you got kind of just whatever you feel like making. This one's definitely more freeform, but you needed to have the basics down to figure out how to play with this stuff. All right, so I'm just going to start with a fit point spline. I'm going to start right at the origin point and just start drawing up. If you make it too tall, too sharp, too fast, or curved in, might be problematic, but we'll deal with that as we go. All right, that's pretty much it. Hit enter. Obviously, I can play with this. Let's make it bigger, anything like that. If you go a little bit outside, that's not a big deal. This is just generally a solid reference point. Now, say I made that line or my point on that line, and I don't want that point on that line. I can only move it left and right. It won't let me go up and down. All you have to do is right click on that dot on that point and go to delete coincident. What it has done is it's created a constraint and it's locked it to that line. If I hit that delete, now I can take it off that line and move it around. I can still get it to snap right back. If I mouse over slowly, and you see how my cursor goes from that little square around the dot. Now when I get over the line, cross lines go in place and it'll lock it right back to that. But that's how you can get it back off there if you accidentally put it there. Remember, you can select the dot again. These are vertices. Play at the handlebars if you want to get it all super wonky. Totally up to you. Main thing is if you go past the origin line here, it can be problematic, but we can always trim it off of there later. Not a problem. Let's kind of make it a little bit like a kind of a little squishy pot here. There we go. All right, great. Goes up and up and up. Nice. We'll say good enough. All right, I've got part of a profile. I need it to be a closed profile. I need it to actually have dimension. Now you could draw a separate line, but I'm lazy. So let's use the offset tool instead. Select there, select my line, and this creates an offset one way or the other of that entire line. I said it needs to be no bigger than 2 to 3 millimeters. So let's say split the difference 2.5. All right, hit enter. There we go. Now, remember, this is an offset. It's not going to go all the way to the top, and it might go past that. That's okay. What we can do down here, I want to close this off. Let's just draw a straight line right from the origin. Let's go past. It doesn't matter. Don't let go one way or the other. If you accidentally go one way or the other, it's not a big deal. If anything, if you see, I have 2 different dimensions to play with. I have the length and the arc angle. I tab over to that where it says right now 111.7 degrees. Let's just put in 90. It's going to lock that little yellow lock symbol comes up. Now it'll only go up and down. Cool. Hit enter. I do need to trim those off. So go to the trim tool, zoom in, chop, chop. Now I've got a solid line there. Good. For the top, I could do the same. Just draw a straight line across. That's a close profile. It just highlighted blue. Sort of kind of all set. I'm going to come back to this. Let's hit enter. We're all done. All right, finish sketch. Go back to the home button. Cool. And I'll just say profile. All right. From here, I'd go to Revolve. Next tool over. Select Revolve. Your options are select your profile. It's a closed profile, so I can select it. Next option, hit axis. I need to select my axis. In this case, it is in fact the actual Z axis. Select there. Bam. Instant body. That's pretty much what we're going for. Now, obviously, that's real janky. We're going to add some details to it. But that's pretty much what we're going for. Technically, you could even do this in partials, meaning right now it's going to go 360 degrees. You could make part of a profile. So if you need to make like wedges or something like that, that's how you could do that. But in this case, we want the full 360. Excuse me. All right. But like I said, that looks kind of ugly. Let's fancy it up a little bit. So I'm going to right click back onto its sketch profile, edit sketch. There we are. I want to make this a little bit more rounded. So I have 2 options. I can use fillet, but fillet doesn't always work on offsets. I can do the one on there. Do not hit enter. Keep selecting. There we go. I can use what the default is, but because it's offset, when I go in and out, ooh, it really messes it up. So let's not do that. Control Z. What I have found works a lot better. Go to create, go to circle, and use 2-point circle, meaning just like the rectangle, your 2 points, it creates a rectangle between those, circle, 2 points, rather than in the center and going outward. Select that tool, and I'm going to use the 2 sides. Now, granted, this does go a little bit beyond my original sketch, but that's not a problem. I'm still within my sketch reference box. There we go. Hit enter. All right. That made that a little more roundy. Hit finish sketch. Now it did not change anything because now I need to go change up my Revolve tool. So go back in and just make sure to add that profile up there. Hit OK. Now the top has a pretty lip. Technically, I could have also added fillet to the completed object, but it's much more effective to change the actual sketch. One other thing on this. Well, like I said, weebles wobble, and in this case, they definitely will fall down. Let's make sure that bottom is a bit more flat. So we go back in, let's edit this sketch. Now I got 2 options again here. I can edit the sketch to where the actual object is flat, or I can just kind of give it some little legs. So the 2 options there, if I want to flatten this bottom, in this case, because I used a fit point spline here, let's select this vertex and use the handlebars. If I bring the handlebars in level, that's going to change the thickness, or that's going to change how flat the bottom is. Now, the problem is that's not necessarily going to change my offset. So ideally, I should have done this before I altered before I made my offset. But in this case, we'll ignore it. It's okay. Change this profile first before you make the offset. That's really the best option. The other option is, and you can, frankly, you can do both. Let's add a little kickstand. Let's make a little foot on it. So in this case, let's just use a straight line. I'm going to select somewhere on this line. You can draw past it, doesn't matter. But if I mouse over on the actual outline, my cursor changes from the black plus sign to a blue blue X sign. Getting tongue-tied. Doesn't really matter where. I'm just going to draw out a little bit. I can draw farther down. That's fine. It's going to create a closed line because of this purple line. Don't worry about that purple line. That is called a projection. We will deal with it later. It is not going to interfere with your drawing whatsoever. It's just a reference line for Fusion, though it does create a automatic closed profile. But again, I want to use offset for here. Let's say again, 2.5. Sure, great. Now, the problem with that is, one, I need these to be flat on the bottom. Also, I need that line to actually go all the way up there. So let's do the flat bottom first. Select line. I will select where my little kickstand leg hits the bottom, and then just draw straight across. See the little 2 hatch marks above? That's showing me that it is constrained to horizontal or vertical, in this case, horizontal. Draw past it. It's okay. All right. Hit enter, and now I can go through and just trim these extra bits off. No biggie. All right. Well, how do I draw a line up there? It's a lot easier to use one of the other tools, modify and extend. This just extends lines along its assumed direction. This does actually work on curves as well, up to the next point where it assumes that line's going to intersect, which is the rest of the body. Hit there, closed it in. That's it. All right, finish sketch. Now, of course, again, it doesn't change anything there. I have to go to edit feature on my Revolve and make sure to also, excuse me, also select now that part. Hit OK. Now, my weeble doesn't wobble, nor does it fall down. It's got a little indent to the bottom. That's okay. Cool. Now, I would tell you, or I will tell you, I would not leave that straight, at least not on the bottom here, because that creates a weird section for printing. Go in with the fillet tool and just select that edge, and then just kind of drag it out till it makes sense. You might even go all the way out. Now it's got a curve there and such. That's all. It's just a little minor detail. You don't have to do that. It's just something you can do for a nicer design. Okay. Let's hit save there. Fixed vessel. Now it can no longer make baby vessels. All right, so one of the main parts of this is you do need this to have multiple components, not just actually physically different, well, virtually different bodies, but actually different components. You can do this now, you can do this later. Works the same way. How to do this? Go up and over a symbol, new component. Select there, and you can either select something automatically or leave it blank, does not matter. You can label them first here too. Let's say vessel. Now, on the very bottom here, where it has this check mark, says activate, leave it checked or don't. What it's going to do is automatically try to kick it over. Now, apparently, it won't let me do anything until I select something, which is it's in this project. I just selected the very top thing. Hit OK. So now what it means by activate, down here, see how now my object has kind of gone ghostly and such. It's not dead or spooky. It is just simply currently active. If I highlight over here, you can see this little dot now formed, little circle in it. To activate the whole project, go all the way up, mouse over at the very end, select there. That activates everything in the project. Currently, my vessel body, and I'll relabel that if I could spell planter. There we go. It's currently still right where it was. I can actually drag and drop this in. So I can take this object, this body, drag it down into vessel, change color, but now when I open this up, now it's got that body in there. So that's how you can do that. The other way is make sure the whole project is active. So mouse all the way up, mouse over, make sure that dot is selected. New project or new component. Now here, let's say tray. Now when I go to make something, make sure this is currently active and I can build my tray there. So same deal, I'll go ahead and do that now. This tray is the component is currently active. Draw my sketch. XY plane, or sorry, XZ plane. This makes it a lot easier. I can just reference, or I can just use the original vessel as a reference. Again, this can be very free form. Right now, because I want this to be flat, I'm going to use a 2-point rectangle. I'm going to select, it doesn't even have to technically touch, but might as well make it touch. Same point, right in the center. This time, I'm going to draw, I don't know, outward somewhere. I'm going to tab over to use the other dimension. We'll do the same, 2.5. It's 2.5 millimeters thick. The other one, draw it further out. I don't know, sure, 60. That makes about sense. Cool. All right. That'll be the very bottom of my tray. From there, I want to make it a little roundy. So I'll go back, use a fit point spline, draw the top, point, point, point. How deep do I want this tray to go? I don't know, deep enough where it makes sense. Couple of points. I don't like where that one is. I'll drag and drop it, make it a little bit more curved. Cool. Again, because I'm lazy, I'm going to use the offset, or, and smart, because I want the computer program to do the work for me. Do the same, 2.5. If it goes the wrong way, meaning it goes that way instead of the other way I want, just mouse over, press the minus button, hit negative, then that goes the way I want it to. That's all. Do the same thing again as far as make it round circle, 2-point circle. Boop, boop. There we go. Now this is not closed because it's the offset there. If I draw the bottom one and offset to make the inner one, this would have been fine. But no problem. I showed you what to do. We go up to modify, extend. Extend more for, I don't know why it didn't complete. Well, now it's just being a jerk. Fine. Extend is refusing to work the way I want to work. Okay. Drag and drop that dot. Plop. They closed it. That's it. No big deal. Okay. Finish sketch. Same thing. Go to Revolve. Select my sketch. If I'd gone in and trimmed out these intersections, this would be selectable as one thing, but it's not. So select, 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 all three. Axis. Z axis again. Bam. Tray. That's it. But because I made all of this with this other component active, it made it all on the tray component. If I go to the very top, activate the whole project, already 2 different components. So the different ways to create this in different components, you can make everything on just as you normally would, create the components separately, and then drag and drop your objects where they need to be, fine. Or you can create the components first, activate which component you want to work on. So you create the vessel component, build what you need in the vessel component. Activate now the tray component, build what you need on the tray component. Either way, your 2 objects are still going to end up in 2 separate components. That's it. Let's save there. Tray. Okay. Cool. So the one other requirement for this project, water still needs to get out of there. Otherwise, you're just going to have a super dead plant soup. All right. Easiest way to do this, let's go and activate the vessel. I'm just going to hide the tray. It just gets confusing. And I'm going to orbit under. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create a sketch. You can either draw directly in the bottom if it's flat, or if it's not, just use the XZ plane, because that's where we have the whole bottom of the vessel meet up with. So just like you're drawing underneath it. Or frankly, you could draw above. It really does not matter. Drawing from below. All right, I need to cut some holes. Let's just use somewhere in between here. You're going to use a center diameter circle, easy peasy. Make it easiest on yourself. Draw this on one of the major axes. Doesn't matter if it's the Z or the Y, the red or the green, but it makes it easier just for alignment. And just drag it somewhere. Not so much that it's on the outside of the pot. I'm going to show you what you can do with that later, though. But somewhere in between. Cool. I found somewhere like 5 or 6 millimeters is good. 10 gets a little large, but you know, if you're using something extra gravelly for soil, cool. But like 5 or 6 millimeters seems to be pretty good. It okay? All right, there we go. Now, you might want to say, well, shouldn't I make multiple sketches that I'm going to extrude through? You can. And to do that, you're going to use a circle pattern tool. Select there, my object, just that circle. That's it. Center point is my origin point, the center. Now, you get to decide how many you want. 3? Sure. 10? A little excessive. 100? What are you doing? Let's go somewhere in between there. Just because odd numbers always feel right. There we go. Cool. Hit 5. Okay. Now from here, finish sketch. And you can select extrude and select all of these. However, like I said, let's be more efficient. Let's not bother with doing each one of these individually, yada, 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 blah, 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 blah. I'm just going to select the one. I'm going to drag straight up. Doesn't really matter how far. I just want to make sure that it cuts through. The default is when you move an extrusion through a body, it's going to switch from operation from join to cut. Leave it where it is. If you think you might change something later, you can always go to extent type, to object, and then select the inside, and then it's always going to cut straight through no matter what. Either way, it gets you there. Select OK. Straight hole. Let's add a little flair. Let's make it curvy. Let's add a fillet to it. Inside, sure, I don't know, 0.5. Roundy. Okay. The reason I'm doing this is because I want to show you how this all works. Okay. So the problem is if I had extruded all of those, I know it's only one operation, but then I have to go through and make all the fillets and blah, 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 blah. It's a lot easier. Extrude one hole, do what you need to it. Now go to create and use the circle pattern tool and make multiples of the completed operation. You don't have to do each one each individual time. Do one and make multiple copies of the finished thing. So, okay. Go to select. I want to select the features, and it's that whole thing. Make sure you get all the parts, both the fillets and the inside edge there. And then it's the same exact operation. Select my axis, the Z axis. I got 3 holes. I didn't mean to have 35 holes. go back to 5. Now when I hit OK, the completed operation. So it's the exact same thing as making multiple sketches and extruding all of them and then adding fillets, or make one sketch, extrude that sketch, add the fillet, and then make multiples of the completed thing. Exact same operation. One last thing if I want. Well, great. It'll drain. What if water gets stuck in the side? We can do that too. But same deal here. I want to show you one kind of little detail here that's part of the, let me save here, sorry. Drain the holes. Yay. All right. So what if you wanted to take this a step further? All that kind of thing. I have a bunch of orchids that I've grown. You see in orchid pots, they have holes in the side, not just on the bottom. How do we do something like that? Exact same thing. Create a sketch. This time, I'm going to create it on the XZ axis, or if you can't quite see it, hide the bodies. Never gets old. Unhide the bodies. And I'm just going to draw a doodle. Doesn't matter. It could be a circle. It could be an amorphous blob. Close sketch. Great. Finish sketch. I'm going to use the extrude tool. Bring that forward. Chops a hole in the face. That's not unsettling at all. And we'll use the fillet tool again. See if I can do a full round on this. Curves that? Hey, it does. Neat. So all that did, instead of making fillets on two edges and hoping they meet, it actually made a complete curve. That's all. Easy peasy. Cool. All right. Now, exact same thing. Create. I always lose it. Circle pattern. Features. That fillet. That's it. But now, instead of making multiples on a flat surface, because I'm making it on the front and I revolve it, or sorry, I make a circle pattern around the axis, the Z-axis, and if you can't find it, it's because it automatically hid the origin. So go on the project tree, unhide origin, and you can see the Z-axis. Sometimes it's hard to select. Really irritating. Gimme. Sorry, hang on. Dang it. There, wouldn't let me select it. All righty, there we go. Ah, all right. Now I'm just making circle copies of something on a front-facing surface, and it did the exact same thing. Except for it's not letting me, you jerk. All right, let's repeat that. It probably is because there's too many of them. Features, axis. Let's try fewer. Let's do 3. Okay, for some reason I'm getting an error. If that happens, sometimes I've found that if you switch to faces and do the exact same thing, it'll work. There we went. So yeah, now you can make holes in the sides. You can do the same thing with other tools, but I'll show you that next time. Just wanted to show you how to ultimately make, and I'll go back up and activate the whole project. You've got your 2 components that each have the separate objects. Your vessel that's created with using a Revolve tool. Your tray created using a Revolve tool. And it has holes in the bottom that would drain water. And if you want, you can make extra details and such. I'll show us how to make more stuff later. I want to talk to you about just actually doing this. So play with it, play along, go from there. And stop.